You know, I don't know a single person that watches Dragon Ball Z or has watched Dragon Ball Z and didn't like the character Piccolo. Piccolo was one of my favorite characters in all of anime, up until Dragon Ball Z ruined him. I remember watching Dragon Ball Z growing up, especially Dragon Ball Z Kai, seeing him stand on tall buildings and rooftops with his shoulder pads flowing in the air. That man had the four-letter word that the kids these days use called aura. When we were first introduced to Piccolo, he was the scum of the earth, rotten to the core, a literal spawn of evil. Piccolo spends the majority of his time in the Dragon Ball series before Z, harassing Goku and his loved ones trying to become the ruler of Earth. But when he ultimately fails, there's something that happens that changes Piccolo forever. Goku was the first person in his life that actually showed him an ounce of decency. Now, to be fair, a couple of those things came from selfish motivations, like him wanting Piccolo to be his rival, or the result of letting him die or killing him would have meant the end of the Dragon Balls as we know it due to his connection with Kami. But nonetheless, this was the beginning of Piccolo's change in character. Because sure, it didn't have the immediate impact on Piccolo, but later on in the show when he was training with Gohan referenced this exact moment, saying that his father told him that he spared his life due to him not thinking that Piccolo was that evil. He more so saw him as a grumpy, angry person than an evil person. That conversation Piccolo reminisced on when he was literally on his deathbed after sacrificing himself for Gohan. The shift in tone for his character was complete. Piccolo was no longer this spawn of evil that he was introduced to us as. The icing on the cake for his character came in the Cell Saga when he finally merged back with Kami. I went in depth about this when I talked about the Cell Saga in one of my recent videos, but just to give a short quick reminder, Kami knows Piccolo better than anybody else in the world. So him seeing Piccolo damn near beg him just to try to save the planet that he was terrorizing in Dragon Ball from Cell, it proved to Kami once and for all that Piccolo was no longer the same evil being that he was. Hence, the story that they started telling us in the beginning of Dragon Ball finally concluded with his character. To top things off with his character growth, Piccolo was seen as a very competent fighter. And at the end of the day, yes, you could have this great character story, but this is a show about fighting, man. If you're not a competent fighter, then get the fuck off the screen. In the beginning, we saw Piccolo was seen eye to eye on Goku's level. Sure, Goku ended up beating him, but they had a very competitive and amazing fight. One of the best fights in all of the franchise, you could argue the best, and a lot of the fights later on in the show follow that same formula. I would suggest if you haven't seen Dragon Ball, you should at least check out that specific fight between Goku and Piccolo. When they go to Namek, Piccolo is also very strong and competent to the point that he holds his own against Frieza in his second form while he still has his shoulder pad weights. Now, of course, he did merge with Nail before the fight, but he also did training with King Kai as well. And I believe that fight that he had against Frieza, I'm not gonna lie, back then as a kid, I actually thought he stood a chance, even though in all actuality, there wasn't a single prayer you could give him to win that fight. We later see in the Cell Saga, Piccolo is not only strong, but he's just as competent as even some of the Saiyans at points in the story. As in the beginning of the Cell Saga, due to him training with Goku and Gohan, he was fairly similar to Goku in power. Then after he merges with Kami, he is literally the strongest character among all the Z fighters. As Vegeta was very surprised to see that it was Piccolo's power that he was sensing when he was fighting First Form Cell. Later on in the arc, he has one of the best fights throughout the entire series fighting Android 17. Now, of course, Piccolo was not strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Cell after he absorbed a bunch of towns and started the transformations, but I'm really not that mad about that because at the end of the day, Cell was the main villain. Even Vegeta, Trunks, Goku, they all stood no chance against Cell. So Piccolo being no different really didn't bother me. But this is really where my positives for Piccolo ends, because after the Cell Saga and even in between the Cell Saga, there are things about him that just don't make any sense and make him an outright just incompetent character. In the Buu Saga immediately, Piccolo serves very little value towards the overall story. I mean, of course he has his moments here and there, like when he killed Babidi, even though that was immediately undone by Buu. The idea of him being the one to help Trunks and Goten learn the fusion technique, that was decent, I guess. But outside of those moments, I don't really see a great purpose for Piccolo in that story. His character has little to no story whatsoever. At the end of the arc, he's the same character that he was in the beginning. And on top of that, he can't even compete with Majin Buu in any of his forms, so he serves no type of physical threat. This is also around the time they tried to lean into the whole thing of Piccolo being a master strategist in battle, which is just so laughable because there's been so many times, even in other arcs before the Buu saga, where Piccolo has done really stupid things that have cost them in the long run, like him attacking Raditz off rip when they first met each other, or him flat out just telling Raditz about the Dragon Balls, which led to the Saiyans overhearing the whole conversation through Raditz's scouter. And hell, one of the dumbest acts of all was the fact that he even fought Android 17 in the first place. That fight was the reason why Cell was able to locate them, because he can't sense Android 17, but he could sense Piccolo. Now, to be honest, I'm not mad about any of these moments. My issue is the fact that in the Buu saga, they specifically told us that he was this genius, but we never really saw that in the past. And if you want to say things were different now because he fused with Kami, I'm willing to listen to you on that. But in the Buu saga, he still does a couple of head-scratching things. He thought Gotenks could defeat Super Buu. He couldn't. He wanted to fight Fat Buu, and Krillin had to talk him out of it because even Krillin knew that was a stupid idea. And later in the arc, when Gohan was fighting Super Buu, Buu went into hiding during the fight, and Piccolo thought Buu was dead. Mind you, Piccolo had already seen that Buu was capable of regeneration. You could say I'm nitpicking a lot of these little things, but the little things add up, especially when you're trying to tell me that this guy is a genius. This is the same guy who couldn't detect that Buu was creeping up on him while he has super hearing. Talk about a lack of awareness. Later on in Dragon Ball Super, Piccolo never really maintained any level of importance. They tried to redo the scene of him sacrificing himself for Gohan in the Resurrection of F saga, and that was nostalgia that just fell flat on their face. Because redoing that scene the way they did it just completely missed the point of Piccolo doing it the first time. When he did it the first time for Gohan, it was a surprise. It wasn't something that we saw coming because that's not who Piccolo was. But to do it again in Dragon Ball Super when their relationship is already well established just completely misses the mark. Then you got the Universe 6 tournament where Piccolo looks like a complete clown. I mean, I understand that Frost was cheating, but that was the perfect opportunity for them to show Piccolo's real genius intellect. Have him be the one to figure out that Frost was cheating and still win anyways. I mean, if we're really being honest, in that arc, the Universe 6 team looked pathetic. It was really just Hit and everybody else. So seeing Piccolo go out to Frost like that just made him look like a loser in my opinion. And that's a constant theme in Dragon Ball Super. I don't really want to get into all of that stuff because it all started in the Buu saga. The Buu saga took Piccolo, who is one of the most competent fighters in the show, able to go back and forth with some of the strongest villains throughout the entire franchise, and literally turned him into a babysitter and comedy character. And then after that, it just got out of control and it became the Saiyan show of Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta. Characters like Krillin, Tien, and especially Piccolo, they just get thrown to the wayside, which is why I will always maintain that Piccolo merging with Kami was the ending of his story, but it was also the ending of his real importance to the show. Yes, Dende is not a bad character, but there really was no reason to bring him back to be the guardian of the earth. Why couldn't Piccolo do it? I mean, if he gained the knowledge of Kami to all of a sudden be this master strategist, why didn't he gain the ability to just create Dragon Balls? That way, at the bare minimum, they had to keep him alive, and maybe he would have had a better role in the Buu saga later on. But nah, we had to give more importance to Mr. Satan in that saga than Piccolo. And it's really sad to see because Piccolo was one of the best characters in the beginning of the franchise. I mean, really think about it. Piccolo at one point was the main antagonist of the show. But I guess because he doesn't have Saiyan blood in him, nobody gives a shit. But I want to know what you guys think about this down below in the comment section. Don't forget to also drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and press that bell for post notifications. This is your boy Omo Mustard signing out. Y'all stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.